Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my Easy EdTech Club, a membership designed to help K-12 educators save time and simplify technology integration. When you join, you'll get instant access to dozens of months' worth of content from the past couple of years, plus new masterclasses, guides, and resources each month. It's all self-paced, so you can dive in whenever it works for your schedule. Head to easyedtechclub.com to learn more and sign up. That's easyedtechclub.com for all the details. This week's episode is titled Quick and Easy Bulletin Board Ideas for Busy Teachers. Now, if you're listening to this when it goes live in July, you might have the beginning of the school year on the mind, or you may be a few weeks from planning what displays or visuals in a classroom setting of yours might look like. If you're catching up on this episode a bit later in the year, well, we know that visual displays are great for all sorts of units of study, whether you're looking to set the tone for something new like the first few weeks of school, or you're looking to set the tone or celebrate a new unit of study or one that's just finished up. I've got some quick ideas for you. Many of these have that kind of back to school theme. That's why I thought it would be great to do this for you over the summertime. But like I said, if you're catching this a bit later in the year, I know you'll be able to tailor these to all sorts of environments, all sorts of seasons, if you will. Now, in today's episode, I'll link out in the show notes, that is, I'll link out to oodles of extra bulletin board resources. I've got a blog post on making QR codes for your bulletin board, one on fall bulletin boards, one on winter bulletin board ideas. I've got lots of things that take a techie spin to a pretty flat experience, right? We typically think of a bulletin board as something covered in staples. At least that's been my experience in the past as a classroom teacher. But I thought it would be fun to take a techie spin on some of these quick ideas so that you could still have a physical space to bring students to at the beginning of the school year, but then at the same time, make some techie connections. So I've got this list for you, just a handful. Let me count for you before I tell you a number that's not accurate. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the list here. I think I counted right in the scroll of my outline, but let's jump into it. Like I said, these have a bit of a back to school theme since we're in the summertime together, but you could take a spin on any of them and try them out at different times of the year too. First up is a travel wish map. You can create a world map bulletin board and invite kids to put their names or pictures on the map to show a place they'd either like to visit or learn more about. Now, this could be kind of like a global welcome sign that encourages kids to dream big at the start of the year, and maybe also give you some insight into some high interest locations that you can weave into your course content. So we think maps sometimes in social studies, but you could also do this in an ELA environment and then take that into consideration when choosing some current events, informational text. You could do this in a science classroom and then pull in some examples when you're talking about earth science to different parts of the world, right? So this could be a fun one really for any content area. Next up is an AI guessing game. So if you've been following along really for the past 2 years now, I've had oodles of content on the blog and the podcast related to artificial intelligence. It's a topic I get asked to speak about and share about a lot. And I had a post called How Teachers Can Generate Images with AI, where I talked about different ideas for generating images. That one's been a popular post, but I'm sure there will be something that pops up after this episode goes live that has to do with AI images, of course, too. So whether it's Adobe Firefly, or maybe Canva's Magic Media, maybe you love Ideogram or another favorite, you could create a bulletin board with a handful of images generated with AI with a prompt you wrote yourself, and images found on a website with real photographs like Unsplash. That's one of my favorite free ones to go to. Then you can encourage students to guess which ones are which, and it might be just a little piece of talking about AI with students this school year, or it may really kick off a whole big discussion or whole unit on media literacy or citations. And just this is the way to get kids interested and excited. Maybe you build out the bulletin board over a week by adding in new images or substitute them in and out and get kids kind of choose which ones they think are generated by AI. Next up is a goal setting spotlight, where you could design a board where each student can add a goal they want to achieve this year. Perfect for the start of the year. Of course, you could do this mid-year too. So you might represent these goals as a collection of, say, balloons or some sort of thing where you could kind of have a bunch of the same one, maybe something with a classroom or seasonal theme. And then each goal could be on the individual balloon or the leaf or whatever it might be. You could have kids write their goals on flowers and create a class garden, right? So many directions. So if students record audio of their goals using a platform, maybe like Seesaw, for example, they can then share the Seesaw QR codes and add them to the board. That way someone could scan and then they could listen to that student's goal spoken aloud. Seesaw makes it easy because when you go to share something, you can create a QR code quickly with it. But of course, you could do this with a lot of tools where you have a file that has a link and then connect it to a QR code. Another idea would feature literary characters. You might create a bulletin board filled with characters from books you will introduced to students over the course of the year, kind of like a sneak peek. You could also feature characters from books that are in your classroom library if you've got books for kids to choose from. And perhaps over the first few weeks of school, you add in characters from books you've read together in this kind of bulletin board space. Now, this would work great in an elementary classroom or in an ELA classroom. If you want, say, a math or science spin, you might instead put up some characters, I'm using air quotes there, of famous figures that connect back to some of the content that you are learning about together. So just another spin outside of an ELA environment. Speaking of math, our next idea for a quick and easy bulletin board idea are math riddles. You can set up a board with interactive math riddles and challenges for students. If this is a board in your classroom, you might choose topics from the previous school year or something that hints at upcoming topics. So like kind of a review or kind of a challenge. If the board's in a shared space in your school, you might want to put up puzzles or riddles that are at a variety of grade levels. Either way, you could change them up weekly and maybe have a short link or a QR code that goes to a space where students can post responses, like a Padlet, for example. With Padlet, you could set it up so that there's moderation, so no one would see each other's answers until you kind of reveal them, right, or approve those posts. So far for our bulletin board ideas, we've got a travel wish map, an AI guessing game, goal setting spotlight, literary characters, and math riddles. I've got 4 more for you here. Next up is another AI connection, a guess the prompt bulletin board. So similar to the AI guessing game with the pictures I mentioned earlier, this could be something where you ask kids to guess the prompt used to generate an image. So like the prompt that you wrote to create a picture. You could post an image generated with AI when you've made yourself on a bulletin board and ask kids to guess the prompt. You could even create a QR code. Maybe you put it in the corner of the board that goes to a Google form where they can submit their guesses as a way to participate. Now, this is an activity, the guess the prompt activity, that I do all the time when working with groups of educators. It's one of my favorite ways to introduce AI generated images and might be something you bring back to your group this school year. Next up is a This Month in History, where you might create a bulletin board that kind of feels like a time machine, one that focuses on a this day or this week or this month in history spin on whatever feels manageable. I think changing something every day might feel a bit tedious. And you can highlight historical figures or events related to the time of year for that month, if you will, that also connect back to your content. So if you're not quite sure where to start, maybe you're in a foreign language classroom and you want some ideas that connect back to the language you're teaching students. Say you're teaching French to the group and you want some moments from that month in history in France or another French-speaking country. If you're not quite sure where to start, you could do like a timeline search or search for a list of notable events from the month of, say, September or October. Or you could even go to ChatGPT or another chatbot and kind of explain your thinking for this bulletin board and see what events they suggest. You just want to do a fact check to make sure there's no hallucinations or incorrect suggestions that the chatbot gives you. Now, if you're looking for a science idea or science spin, the next idea on the list is a science sneak peek. So you could dedicate a board to wonders of science type of theme where you put fun facts, experiments, and maybe even scientists related to upcoming units of study. So this is a great way to encourage kids to ask questions about a topic you'll dive deeper into as a class later in the school year. Totally up to you, right? What the theme might be. And you might put in a techie connection, like a YouTube video where students can scan a QR code on the board and watch a video that shows a science experiment or an interview with a scientist. Now, last up on the list is a bulletin board with some eco-friendly tips. So some of you might know the story, particularly if you follow the podcast for a while or listen to some interviews with guests that I worked with as a classroom teacher. But when I was teaching fifth grade, I taught fifth grade for just shy of 7 years. I worked in a school that was a traditional public school and then became a magnet school. And our theme was environmental stewardship. So we were always talking about eco-friendly tips. That's why if you've seen me speak before, sometimes I tell the story of the worms or the compost bin in my classroom. So you might promote some environmental awareness or do a bulletin board that offers some eco-friendly tips, encouraging kids to make recycling choices or something like that. So plenty of things you could do related to a school theme. Eco-friendly tips would work anywhere, but was always a great one in our particular environment. So if you are ready to get started with a bulletin board for back to school, maybe you will choose one of the ideas on today's list, although there are so many different directions to choose from. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Create a welcoming bulletin board by using visuals and themes to excite new students. Incorporate QR codes, AI images, or even guessing games to make boards interactive. Highlight student voice by sharing goals, interests, or creative work on a bulletin board. Update bulletin boards regularly, maybe once a month, to keep kids engaged and interested in new ideas. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode, including links to some of those blog posts I mentioned and the roundup of these bulletin board ideas by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com and finding today's episode, number 329. This episode is sponsored by my Easy EdTech Club, a membership designed to help K-12 educators save time and simplify technology integration. When you join, you'll get instant access to dozens of months' worth of content from the past couple of years, plus new masterclasses, guides, and resources each month. It's all self-paced, so you can dive in whenever it works for your schedule. Head to easyedtechclub.com to learn more and sign up. That's easyedtechclub.com for all the details. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.